With the arrival of Street Fighter VI, Capcom wanted to make something big for the game's first Capcom Pro Tour, offering an absurd amount of money to whoever would get to be SF6's first Capcom Cup Champion. During the season, an army of Luke, Ken and Deejay players was formed, with little to no space to different characters. As Capcom Cup X came to an end, an amazing story unfolded. There were no favorites in grand finals, no familiar faces, and $1 million were awarded to a champion no one could have predicted. But the story gets better. After winning it all, this champion was about to completely disappear. This is a breakdown of the greatest one and done in Street Fighter history. In this series, I want to talk to you about the science of Street Fighter, which means I will explain not only how the game works, but also how high-level players make their decisions, so you can better understand the matches you watch and also grow as a player. In this video, we're going to take a close look at the greatest one and done in Street Fighter history, starring Uma, the first Capcom Cup champion for Street Fighter VI. I really hope you enjoy, and if you do, don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel and help me reach 1000 subs. The match we're going to break down took place during Capcom Cup X finals. Uma's opponent was the Hong Kong player Chris Wong, the winner of one of the only offline tournaments in the inaugural SF6 CPT circuit, held in France in November 2023. Uma and Chris Wong faced off in grand finals of Capcom Cup X, but their most intense match actually happened a bit earlier, in winners finals. By that point, both players had survived 3 full days of competition in the group stage. On the 4th day, during the finals, they made it through top 16 and top 8 without a single loss, making them the only undefeated players out of a total of 48 competitors. That, of course, was about to change for one of them. Juri is a rushdown character with tools for every kind of situation in SF6. She has a projectile, the Sai Hasho, long-ranged normals, a dive kick, and one of the best anti-airs in the game. What makes Juri unique though is her Fuhajin, better known as Fuha, which allows her to start stocks that enhance some of her special moves. Another important aspect of the Taekwondo fighter is her Feng Shui engine, her Super Art 2. Perhaps one of the hardest supers to master in the game, it is also one of the most rewarding, as it forces the other player into the corner with a combo, allows for safe jumps, and maximizes Juri's offensive potential. On the other side, Luke is a less complex but equally powerful character. In fact, he is designed to be simple and efficient, fitting into the Shoto archetype, the same as Ryu and Ken, and Akuma. His projectile is extremely fast, his rising uppercut is basically a Shoryuken 2.0, and his flash knuckle can be used to knock down the opponent or extend combos. Luke is a character with no real weaknesses, capable of dealing with any situation, with some of the best normals in the game and huge damage output.
He's in burnout.
Massive for Chris Wong.
But he can't be too hasty with the stun. He cannot be too hasty with that stun. He's gonna go for it. Wow, he is going for it.
That was beautiful. That
Right.
should be a dead chunk.
This.
CA, right?
No, I think he's got Spec of Health.
Really?
There's too much scaling.
Hey, Jammers, I'm back on form, Stan.
What?
Luke and Juri were considered top tiers in Season 1, and their matchup is mostly even. Both characters have been adjusted since then, but I'll let you know about the particularly important changes. With this in mind, let's have a look at the match we're going to break down.
The interesting thing will be is if Uma wants to use the Fireball, how will Chris Wong try to respond? Because he doesn't really have an projectile tool outside of level 1. It could be parries instead. We've got to test Uma's reactions as well towards Drive Rush. We saw Chris Wong try to do that there with the suppressor, but already getting hit by a Fireball. Scores up again.
Already checking the lows, you're starting to see some of the patterns. Uma was up until this point. Chris Wong dishing out the damage, opting to go for the advantage, and a little bit of a stutter to lay on the crouching jab and everything. And now Chris Wong has a lot of room to work with to build up some of that drive gauge. And you know Uma's going to be stepping on the gas every single time to close that gap significantly.
Well, he's got to be careful when he throws the Fireball and tries to Drive Rush after it, because if Chris Wong tries to get perfect parry or walk forward, yeah, he can actually try and check the Drive Rush, the subsequent Drive Rush, I should say. He gets an abundance of damage there into the backdash, but no punish. There from Uma. Oh, okay, that works. That was a juggle. Okay, impromptu juggle there. Wow. Never seen that before, but it worked. Improvised, worked out. And he misses his, yeah, he missed something. That was an execution error from Chris Wong, and he's not happy. And you can tell on his facial expression when he makes an execution error.
That's the second time he's done that on the big stage, by the way. It's even within the top 8.
Good, okay, trading with the Fireball and then the chase down there into the conversion for the level 1, which puts Chris Wong in a dangerous spot. Unless he has other plans.
Who's more dangerous? The person applying the media or the person who's loaded with an OP?
Maybe Phenom was right all those years ago.
He was. I still think he was. He is.
Good block, and he anticipated it. He probably tried to bait something else there, but Uma thought he was looking to do something else. That's why he went to the anti-Pro Tour.
Oh, man, that was such a sharp angle. Couldn't get the uppercut.
Way, he's not going to drive reversal. He can't, and he did a delay jab. He was anticipating that, understanding the situational awareness, and he
You thought you could let the fireball ring with a level 3? If there's anything that's anti-fireball, it is definitely that.
Well, he's still alive here. What's the risk going to be from Uma? He's still in feng shui, by the way, so he can take advantage of this, but it's about to completely dissipate. Backs away. And he's low on drive gauge. No resources left in the tank, so he goes for a dive kick instead, and he's trying to avoid the chip. He was trying to avoid a chip scenario, and Chris Wong, I'm telling you, his situation awareness and understanding when people want to do something and bait something from him, he's not biting, man. I'm telling you, it's so difficult to fish out of the sea.
Had Uma gone for just anything on the ground, he would have gotten OD uppercut first trouble, and he possibly would have died from chip.
Takes the grab one time, walks into the fireball there, playing it safe, gets a punish. He's been actually handling those Fuha stores really well. Tencent Renancia.
Great control thus far in the corner from Uma.
Hey, that's a drive reversal. An offensive one at that as well. Keep him marshaled in the corner. Gotta be careful with whipping some of those buttons, man. Chris Wong is pouncing it ready. He'll burn himself out if he has to.
I like the presence of mind for Chris Wong just to throw out some of the sandglasses while Uma created space after that round off. But now, again, the big risk paying off.
These have been out of character uppercuts. They've actually been successful thus far. I'm not going to lie. I'm not used to seeing Chris Wong play this risky, but he doesn't want to be trapped in the corner for too long while his drive gauge is still regenerating. Checks him out. There you go. Save cancel. Perfect. Oh, and he got it.
How often have we seen that? We've seen Nephi do that a couple of times.
And that could have been the round.
That was it. Uma did not commit to the rest of that string. That was a counter hit as well.
He's got a guess for game, and he blocks. Still got level 1. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to try and do that level 1 against the Sandblaster again. And Chris Wong is highly attentive towards that, and this is what I was talking about!
No, but he didn't get the last bit of it! Uma saved by the grace of Jury's fireball!
Uma starts the first game looking for Fuhajin stocks. However, if poorly spaced, this move can be punished on block, which is why Chris Wong lands his first punish with a crouching jab followed by a drive rush cancel combo. While the loop player establishes a good life lead, Uma goes for a full enhanced projectiles to get closer and apply pressure on Chris. Generally, Jury's side hustle is not a major threat, but with the Fuha buff, the projectile stays on the screen longer, allowing her to use it as a shield while approaching the enemy. This enables all sorts of mix-ups, and significantly increases the pressure Jury can exert against someone's defense. In its EX version, which costs 2 drive bars, the projectile has properties similar to that with Fuha buffs, but without using a stock to be enhanced. Thanks to these projectiles, Uma closes the gap across the entire screen, not only escaping the corner but also putting his opponent in the same situation. Pressured and looking for the right moment to escape, Chris Wong gets hit by Jury's forward heavy punch, and Uma converts the interaction into an incredible juggle combo. Juggles are a type of combo in fighting games where a character is sent airborne, usually by a launcher, and continues to get hit mid-air before touching the ground.
Oh, he might be dead. He actually might be dead. I think he's dead. This guy has to do it.
Oh, the very last hit!
This type of combo exists in almost every fighting game, though each game has its own set of rules regarding how they work. Chris lands a good crouching medium kick, but he drops the final juggle of his flash knuckle due to an execution error, and ends up being finished off by an EX side hustle. You might think that high-level players don't drop their combos, but the truth is that even the most incredible competitors eventually feel the pressure of the moment. So don't feel too bad when you drop your combos in a tense situation, especially if you're not fighting for $1 million. In the second round, the EX side hustle knocks Luke down during the projectile war and allows Uma to advance with a drive rush followed by an overhead. The combo is finished with a level 1 super, and Chris Wong is back into the corner. He bets on an EX rising uppercut, which is fully invincible. After a brief period of caution between both players, Chris Wong goes for a drive rush cancel followed by a shimmy. Uma misreads the interaction, thinking that Chris would go for a throw. That's why he tries an instant overhead followed by Shikusen, Jury's dive kick. If Chris had gone for the throw, not only would Uma have been rewarded with a combo, but he would have also left Luke in the corner. However, since executing a shimmy requires walking backwards, the Luke player was able to block Uma's gamble and punish him afterward. With 2 bars of super available, Uma activates Feng Shui Engine for the first time, but it gets interrupted by a delay jab from Chris. Delay jab is a technique where the player slightly delays pressing a button. This prevents their character from getting caught by a frame trap, because if a button is pressed against their defense, they will block immediately. However, if the opponent tries to walk up for a throw, only then will the light punch come out. Unlike the late throw tech, this technique is superior because it doesn't expose the player's defense to shimmies and neutral jumps. That doesn't mean there aren't countermeasures against delayed jabs, but it is a solid defensive tactic in modern Street Fighter. Uma advances with a drive rush, does a block string, but uses his side hustle carelessly and gets caught by Luke's level 3 super. Even in Burnout and with no super meter, Uma surprises Chris Wong with a dive kick, creating a guess for game situation. Fearing a rising uppercut, he jumps forward and puts himself in the corner. If Chris had taken the bait, Uma would have closed out the match, but Chris's self-control in not going for a desperation move is rewarded, allowing him to take the first match to the final round. Uma starts the third round with an excellent whiff punish, and soon has his opponent in the corner. Chris tries some projectiles and finally takes a risk with a jump in, but he is quickly stopped by Jury's dancing ring. At this point, Uma is not interested in just rushing it down, instead adopting a reactive game plan, patiently waiting for Chris to make a mistake and get punished. This strategy is very common at high levels, since, even though the corner is the worst position for the defender, pressuring carelessly can create an opening for them to escape. That's why experienced competitors don't always choose to pressure immediately, even when their character archetype is built to rush down, effectively switching between corner control when the enemy is desperately trying to escape, and pressuring those who prefer to be extra cautious is the key to make the most out of this situation. After a long period without risky plays from either player, Uma goes for a drive rush cancel, spending 3 bars of drive gauge to land a throw. With low health, Chris Wong bets on another EX rising uppercut to avoid getting pressured to death. He fails to escape the corner, and both players start playing with extreme caution. This time, Chris Wong is the one spending 3 drive bars to land a throw. After knocking Uma down, he uses a projectile to apply safe pressure as his opponent wakes up. Well, at least that's what Chris Wong thought. But when executed on the perfect frame, Jury's level 1 super can completely avoid Luke's Sandblast, even though the super isn't invincible to projectiles. This technique was extremely difficult to execute and only worked against certain characters. In Street Fighter 6, level 1 supers are generally invincible to strikes and throws, but vulnerable to projectiles. The reason Jury's level 1 could avoid Luke's Sandblast is that, just before the projectile connects, the beginning of the super animation caused Jury's hurtbox to retract, making her evade the fireball. This required precise timing and only worked when executed on the exact same frame the projectile was about to connect. If done too early, the projectile would hit the super. If done too late, the character would get hit before completing the input. In fighting games, interactions like this are called character-specific tech. And in this context, tech doesn't refer to a throw-escape attempt but rather technology or strategy, meaning a technique specific to dealing with a certain character. This particular tech has been adjusted and no longer works for any character as of Season 2. The best part of this interaction, however, is that in September 2023, months before Capcom Cup, Uma made a tweet about his discovery, describing it as a technique that 99.9% of players won't be able to implement in a match, including myself. Call it the humility of a champion, but Uma executed this technique flawlessly throughout the biggest event of his career. Now he has his rival in the corner and is looking to finish him off. However, Chris Wong lands a crouching medium punch and spends his remaining drive bars on a drive rush cancel. He chooses to save his super bars, knowing they wouldn't be able to end the game. Instead, he follows a combo route that guarantees him Nokizeme, that is, the opportunity to pressure the opponent as they get up. It might seem like Chris Wong dropped his combo since his special move doesn't connect, but this is actually a setup where Luke intentionally misses his special to gain frame advantage on the next interaction. If the opponent tries to escape a throw with a throw tech or presses a button while getting up, Luke will have enough advantage to severely punish them. That's why Uma's patience to just block was crucial. He could have died if he got grabbed or hit by any move, but he made the correct read and survived. In Burnout and with low health, Chris Wong doesn't have many options besides trying to close out the match before getting cornered. You can see him using buffers in the neutral game, attempting to catch Uma off guard if he throws a projectile or another move slow enough to be interrupted on reaction. Buffers can be used after normal moves, after a jump, a backdash, etc. After a normal attack, you can input the full command for a special or super move, which will only activate if the normal connects. If the move doesn't connect, the buffer won't trigger. In neutral, the input should be executed partially, and the final button should only be pressed when you're sure you saw something to react to. This is why buffers can sometimes be mistaken for teabags, but they're actually just partial inputs for a super move. Buffers are powerful tools, but they can also be deceptive. A skilled player will use your reactions against you, making you waste meter for nothing. At the same time, buffers like Chris Wong's can be the difference between winning or losing a match. In Luke's case, his fast 6-frame level 1 super would have beaten most projectiles in the game, like the Hadouken or Sonic Boom. But the unique property of Saihasho is that it's a low-traveling projectile, which completely avoids mid-height fireballs. Chris Wong's buffer after his 2 backdashes would have beaten Ryu, Ken, Gaio, Chun-Li, and even Juri herself if Uma had a single pixel less of health. But this time, the gods of Street Fighter were on the side of the Taiwanese player, and Chris Wong's brilliant idea to backdash while buffering, and his great reaction ended up being his downfall. Uma had just started the full stock that allowed his projectile to reach Chris Wong before Juri could be finished off by Vulcan Blast.
It's highly attentive towards that, and this is what I'm talking about! No, but he didn't get the last bit of it!
The rest of the set was just as intense as the first match, but Uma managed to close out the fight after patiently blocking, waiting for the right moment to strike and secure victory.
Blocks it out here, staggered
The
lines.
defense from Uma! The perfect parry!
Feng Shui!
We gotta go into the feng shui!
Right.
Coast to coast!
He has to play it safe and go for the safe jump. Do not try any gimmick. Just do the safe jump, please. Thank you. There he goes, still applying the pressure. Blocks the fuzzy. He didn't commit to the dive kick. He's still alive. Can he tip him out? And there you have it.
The adaptation from Chris Wong came during Grand Finals, where he won the first set with a 3-0 and thus resetting the bracket, a necessary condition for a player coming from the loser side to become champion. Nevertheless, after the reset, Uma made the proper adjustments, closing out the second set with a dominant 3-0 victory, finally securing the title and that $1 million check.
Perfect
Carry!
parry.
Hey, look at the setup for the feng shui engine! The corner carry is
Burn
gonna be
out,
so
burn him out,
significant,
burn him
and
out.
so is the burnout!
He's got no resources, so he's going to play with the stun. He's going to set him up for a stun scenario. Let's see what he does. This full conversion. This is the
He's
game.
it.
He's done. I think he's done. That's it. It will be the stun. He's going to store up. He's going to finish the combo. And ladies and gentlemen, $1 million is going to be awarded to Uma. Nobody had him on the cards to take the cup.
It's kind of ironic that, among so many renowned players considered favorites to win Capcom Cup, the Grand Finals ended up being between 2 training partners and rivals from Southeast Asia. In fact, Uma qualified for Capcom Cup by defeating Chris Wong in Grand Finals of the East Asia World Warrior event. Evil champion Angry Bird was eliminated in the group stage, Mena RD fell in top 16, and there wasn't a single Japanese or North American player in Grand Finals. No, the grand conclusion to the most prestigious circuit in Street Fighter history came down to 2 players who were likely only strong enough to win because they had each other as training partners during the first year of the game. Uma went to Capcom Cup with just $300 to spend, money he had saved by winning weekly tournaments in his region. Travel and accommodation expenses were covered by Capcom, but after Capcom Cup, you could say that the player got to experience the miracle of multiplication. He also caught the attention of the VTuber he admires so much, whose hoodie he wore during the finals. "The player wearing my hoodie is the champion. Congratulations," wrote Okami Miyu on Twitter to her more than 1 million followers, congratulating Uma in a tweet that went viral. Uma's response was simple: "It felt as comfortable as if I were home." Amid this unexpected turn of events, artists paid tribute to the champion with illustrations of Juri wearing Miyu's hoodie or standing alongside the player. Fans even created a mod featuring Juri in the same hoodie. After Capcom Cup, Uma, who was known as Kagami during Street Fighter V, received an invitation to play in the Red Bull Comité in New York, but he had to respectfully decline. The reason? On the same date, a major VTuber event, the Hololive Festival, was taking place, and he was not interested in missing it. But here is the most amusing twist in the story. After Capcom Cup, Uma never participated in an official Street Fighter VI tournament again. He trained for a year, qualified for the cup, won $1 million, and never ever came back. And that's why that was the greatest one and done in Street Fighter history. It's true that Uma never came back, but this SF4 prodigy named Kusanagi, who didn't play SF5 at all because he didn't like the game very much, came back to Street Fighter 6, and he actually won one of the craziest tournaments you ever gonna see. Click here to check it out. I promise you, it's an amazing story.